So there you go. And then just there's that.
Okay.
And then Ashley and Joe, I'll get the light.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So this week's code of conduct is to maintain confidentiality of insider information learned about ECI or our clients. And we are continuing with our record with 119 days without a recordable injury. So congratulations, everybody. And this week, Joe is going to talk about risk assessment.
Thank you, Julia.
Hi, guys.
Good
morning, ladies. We're going to go through like risk assessment real quick. And risk assessment is different from hazard analysis and hazard identification, which we've been, Matt talks a lot about, and we try to plan for our jobs and identify where the hazards exist. So we're going to go the next level up now is risk assessment and actually evaluating the best options for mitigating our risks or our hazards, I should say. So strategies for good decision making is ultimately what we're trying to teach everybody and learn from. So a risk assessment is a careful examination of what in your work could cause harm to people and your environment, so that you can evaluate whether you can have taken enough precautions or should do more to prevent those possible harms. So a little bit of a mouthful, but at the end of the day, it's basically we're examining the work that we need to do, evaluating what are the options to do the work, what are the options to minimize the risks and the hazards that are present, and then we want to act, do what we said we're going to do, and then we want to reassess as well, and make sure throughout the process we're always improving our decisions. So what are the steps in general? One, identify the work to be done, the steps involved, and the necessary resources you need. So whatever the projects that we're doing, what is the ultimate? What do the drawings say? What are we building? What do we, what are those steps involved to build that? What are the logical steps involved? And it may not. We may alter those steps once we get through the assessment. But at first, what are the general steps that we need to take? Then examine what the hazards that exist may affect you, your coworkers, or your environment. So that's the hazard identification part. Are there buried utilities? Are there overhead power lines? Are we on steep slopes? Is there water? Are there water hazards? Are there anything else that the normal things that we talk about day in and day out? Decide what you're going to do to prevent or minimize the potential harm. So that's now we're getting into the hierarchy of controls. What are my options for minimizing those risks, for those hazards and mitigating those hazards, getting rid of them or controlling them? Write down your plan and communicate it to your coworkers. We have our JHA form. That's kind of the actual medium for recording our assessment. So the job site hazard assessment is what that form is. It's not a hazard identification. It's a hazard assessment. And then 5, follow through with your plan. So that's the plan we write on paper in the morning or before each new task. That's the plan that we want to progress, and that's the plan we want to build off of. And ask questions throughout. That's the key point, that asking questions throughout, whether it be the foreman asking questions of the crew, or the crew asking questions of the foreman, or people asking questions to Matt or Ken or anyone else in the company that may have the ability to comment or provide positive feedback. So we always, last week, I know Alberta mentioned the stop, think, act, review. That's basically, we're repeating a little bit of that too, but STAR is basically the same type of a process. And we try to apply the risk assessment to every step of our planning. So, a lot of these jobs, when they come out for bid, some of the first things we do is try to see what are the hazards that exist. What would happen if we, what types of injuries would we, be looking at? What types of possible equipment damage might we get into in these types of situations that we're looking at projects for? And so, we all know what risk is, and when you're assessing the risk, you're determining, how bad is it? Is it going to be? Am I going to scratch my finger, or am I going to get my finger chopped off, or am I going to get my hand cut off? Those types of evaluating the risk, and sometimes knowing what potential may happen will help you identify the best control to put in place. So sometimes when you get into like a fall hazard situation, for example, you're saying, oh, here's a fall hazard, maybe I need to put up guardrails. But then think, sometimes putting up guardrails puts you in a really worse situation than actually just staying back from the leading edge and and putting some other types of controls in place. So that's an assessment. It's kind of like engineering. It's an iterative process. So we're in our jobs every day. We're assessing safety hazards, things that could cause immediate injury. We're assessing health hazards, ones that can cause harm by repeated exposure, silica dust and loud noise and excessive noise and things like that. Environmental hazards, one that could cause harm to the environment. And then these are kind of just the ones that specifically related to environmental health and safety. But when we're doing these same risk assessments, we can also be looking out for the company, looking out for are we putting our equipment into positions that may cause damage if something's not done right. Are we not making good decisions that's going to help with the company and our ability to do these jobs under the cost that we hope to do them under. So those other types of considerations can be factored in when you're assessing the risks on the project. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just safety. We can be looking out for everything in the whole company. And then this is nothing new. The hierarchy of controls. Once we identify those hazards and we've identified, we've evaluated what could happen if something goes wrong, then we can start to plug in the hierarchy controls. Ideally want to eliminate it. And then at the area, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and then finally PPE. And so understanding, weigh the options is basically what the assessment is. There's no right one, that plugs in every single time. You have to assess the situation, weigh the options. That's kind of the key point there. And then complete and communicate, your job site hazard assessment. Write it down on the JHA form, talk to the crews, talk to Matt. Make sure everybody knows. Talk to your clients. Talk to the other people that are on your job site, your subcontractors, and make sure what your final decision was and is communicated to everybody, so everyone's working it consistently. So the key point is good risk assessment equals good decisions, and so that's what we're trying to promote today is just making good decisions and making those decisions based on thinking about the different types of outcomes that could come up from the hazards that we see or the activities that we're trying to plan for. So, any questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Sure.
I want to back up a couple slides.
Yep.
To the hierarchy. So I see risk assessment. Just to add to what you're saying is that you have items that are a high potential and a high cost or impact to yourself, and those you want to be way up here in the elimination. And then you have lower risk and lower impact would be more on the PPE side, right?
Some good charts we put for the next one.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. Let's see here. Escape. And here. Okay. So risk assessment during change of operations, I called it, because we need to be always thinking about it. It's not just about the JHA, but moving ahead throughout the day, being on it. So corporate announcements. School is back in session this week or next week, probably beginning of next week. So drive cautiously and be aware of school bus traffic and stopping for lights, of course. And there are some extra fare tickets available. Check with Sarah. First come, first served basis on those. And Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. So this is, we're a compliant EEO business, and the EEOC, which is the commission was established by the federal government in 1965 as part of the Civil Rights Act 1964. And contracts, for example, the contracts with federal aid requires us to sign off that we are compliant to. And the program has been modified several times since its inception, of course, and a lot of newer types of issues have come up. And EEO applies to recruitment and hiring, as well as employee relations. So employee relations covers employer to employee, supervisor to subordinates, and employee to employee. So I was asked already, did you guys have a problem? Did you have to report this? No, this is just a regular routine awareness thing. So just want to point that out. Few points to make here too is that ECI does not tolerate discrimination or harassment of any kind against any individual or protected group. You know, you don't have to be a protected group. If you're being harassed, let us know. And the person to notify is the EEOC officer, who's Ben Dow. And questions on EEOC or if you have complaints about harassment or discrimination or anything like that, just check with them. And specific EEO information and your rights as an employee are contained on these EEO posters located in the safety room in the main office. And this poster right over here talks about it. Mostly Vermont. And then also we have some details in our ECI handbook. So
A lot of job sites now.
yeah, a lot of job sites they're posted, and
State job.
yep, for sure.
So like Joey said, good decisions with the way you're treating other people, and think about what you're saying and doing and how it affects others.
Right.
And if there's any issues that anyone has, you know, bring it to your leader, and if that's not working out, they know that I'll get involved to help to make sure that it's resolved.
Once it's really serious, then I think it goes right to you.
Yeah, if there's ever any question where it's not being resolved, just come to me.
Right.
A lot of you guys have dealt with different things, not related to discrimination, but little issues that come up when they seem very small and you don't deal with them. What happens to them the next day? They get bigger and bigger, and then we're overcome by this problem, and then we're not doing what Joey was just talking about, is we're not thinking about the work and making good risk assessment and decision making on our projects, because we're overcome by the personal stuff and the drama that happens when you don't resolve an issue. So we're committed to following that ECI code of conduct, which is directly related to this stuff, in that if you're following those basic steps on how to conduct yourself, a lot of these problems and issues take care of themselves. But if they don't, I'm here as the person that's ultimately responsible to make sure that we solve them, you know, for you guys. So keep me posted if you need me. My office is always open to you, and my phone, call me anytime.
Thank you, Ben. So this week for technical tips, I want to go into angles a little bit more. We're talking about geometry, and they're measured obviously, typically, I should say, by degrees, minutes, seconds. We talked about radians the other day. Circle contains 360 degrees, as we all are kind of thinking, and that each degree contains 60 minutes and 60 seconds for each minute. And the GPS latitude and longitude coordinates relate to a 360 degree circle around the Earth, both at the equator and on the poles. And it's just a good example of where not every GPS unit is the same, because they have different formats depending on the application. And I have some examples here. Google Earth has traditional degrees, minutes, seconds. I put it in that format. It's a little hard to go. The degree, of course, is a degree. A minute is a single tick, and then a double tick is a second. So degree, minute, second. And then in the Google Earth format, they have second to the decimal point. And then for DigSafe, it's different. So if you call in DigSafe, you have the option of using GPS coordinates. They go degree to the decimal point. A little different. And then there are some others out there that go degree and then minute and then to the tenth of a minute. So I have an example of a conversion. So 73 degrees, 6 minutes and 29.5 seconds. Now, that really is also in this format here, 73 degrees, 6 minutes, 0.49167, or all the way back to the DigSafe format, 73.10819. So how do you get there? Pretty simple, actually. You just have to think about it for a minute. So to go from degrees, minutes, seconds to a decimal format, you just take the 73 and then you add together the 29, let's go to 29.5, divide that by 60 and add the 6 seconds and divide by 60 again. And then to get to The decimal form in degrees to minutes, you just take that remaining portion. So this, after you take away 73, the 0.1089, multiply it back to 60, and you get 73.649, and then the degrees, minutes, seconds, to the seconds decimal format, you take that 73.6, 73-6, I should say, and then you take that decimal form and multiply that out by 60 again. So it gets kind of complex. You got to know which direction you're heading. But if you're calling in a DigSafe, you have to know that the format is different than if you just look on your Google Earth design. Your little Google Earth gives you that coordinate in a sort of hundredth of a second. So.
Cam, on the DigSafe, they'll take the coordinate, but none of their field guys have GPS machines or GPS handhelds, so it doesn't do any good.
They must locate it on their map, and then just go by the nearest street and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it just thought it was kind of foolish to give them coordinates and then the field guys don't have any numbers, have any machines to use it with.
But the DigSafe operators have no idea about this stuff, So
Best way is to
if you need help from the DigSafe operators to convert, you're out of luck. So for projects, we're talking about the residents in rock stabilization this week. That's in Colchester over there, basically across where Charlebois shop used to be, where now the Peterbilt Lucky's trailer is. Or a little further down the road, but all that whole rock side there off Water Tower Hill. So ECI was contracted to stabilize the rock face at the Residence Inn that's off Ratty Road. Everyone kind of knows Ratty, I think. The rock consists of a Dunham dolostone and was excavated, the face was excavated about 2009. So it hasn't been very long since this was excavated. We often think that, it's rock, it'll be fine, it's permanent, it'll last forever. Well, here it's only been, 8 years, and this is the second time we've been there to work on it. So our scope work included hand and mechanical scaling, rock anchors, draping, and meshing. And let's see what's in this picture here. Okay, so the guys are in there in the man basket just doing some hand scaling and, shovels and rakes, just kind of loosening up the loose stuff which falls to the ground and gets picked up after. With the mechanical there, I don't have a picture on that, but we'll use a machine, an excavator, just to claw it loose. If you had something really challenging, you might put a small impact hammer on it. And this picture shows the TEI rock drill at the top, reaching over the face, drilling in an anchor with the man lift down below, giving some assistance. And you can see how close we are to the building, to the Residence Inn. It's right there. This is basically a fire lane, and it's been challenging for the owner to keep it open, and they've been concerned about the potential for little rock falls with pedestrians and their guests walking through there, so it's been a restricted area. So this is the drape. You can kind of see it. It's a little hard to see, and in fact, it's a little hard to see in the field, which is kind of nice. But there's a mesh covering, and the next picture will show you a little better. But there's a mesh covering the rock, so if any little pieces do fall, they fall behind. That's basically a drape. Another section will have an anchored mesh, so that it actually, if there's a piece that's loose, that the mesh will and the anchors will hold it in. There you can see from the top the mesh draped over, and it does form a nice little tight, form-fitting type of drape on the wall. So it's not like, oh, that's ugly, but you see through it to the rock. And they're anchored at the top. And here's another piece of the scaled work after it was all cleaned up. This actually had a big overhang, which if you were facing that overhang, it's like, it's just an overhang, it's not bad. But then if you look at the angle from like here, you realize it was this big joint. And so there was about probably a little more than a foot, probably 18 inches to 15 inches, just a rock, a big slab that was hanging right there. And of course, there's the parking lot. So I just a comment about the Dunham Dolostone. It's like a limestone. It's calcium, magnesium, and 2 carbonate ions. And it was formed more than 400 million years ago from coral reefs, and it's been pushed up. And the Dolostone is similar to a limestone, except that it contains the magnesium and the second carbonate. So a regular limestone would not have the magnesium and would only have 1 carbonate. So very similar. It's just somehow it, chemically got altered with magnesium and then formed a different rock. So you see a lot of that exposed. It's the top part of Wickham's Quarry. Wickham's Quarry, the mine quarry is Moncton Quartzite, which is a very durable, hard rock. Yeah, very good for aggregates, extremely good. And this is the cap rock, and also on the Lone Point out in Burlington, where the rock has come up over the older rock. This is the Dunham Dolomite. The Dolostone is the older rock that's over the shale, and pieces of the dolomite have fallen into the lake. So if you've never been out there to see that, it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. So this is from the archive photos of 2013 rock stabilization we did at Residence Inn on the northeast end. So where we were putting that drape was pretty much where they're working and beyond. And this portion was repaired and scaled back in 2013. We were doing something similar. We're drilling anchors up there. We were hand scaling, only we did a lot more mass rock removal in that earlier project. So that's what I got. Okay, have a good day out there. Rodney.
Picture.
They came out and the whole
Ken Munson, Mike O'Brien, Matt Pickren, Adam Piper, Randy Piper, Chris Putman,
In line.
Patrick Pratt,
Brownie, Scotty.
Really.
Thank you.
Larry Raymond, AJ,
What's the risk reward?
Exactly, and that's probably
Sean Rook, Kyle Salves, Randall Slayers, Joe Severy, Michael Sterwin, James Sullivan,